Welcome to Tradies Who Lead, the podcast about everyday leadership for everyday legends. I'm Ashley Beltecki, a diesel mechanic by trade and your host. On the podcast, we share how every tradie can practice leadership in their role, regardless of their title or experience. In each episode, you'll hear from tradies across all industries about how they apply leadership skills and mindsets in the trades so that we can learn from them and level up our leadership on site. In this episode, we cover how having the courage to have difficult conversations and create visibility for challenges can lift our capability as individuals and as an industry. In this episode, we're joined by a Tasmanian sparky who looked at the gap on the worksite and decided to do something about it. Jasmyn Smith is an electrician, entrepreneur, and co-founder of The Go Company, a business built on a simple yet powerful idea. Women working in the trades deserve access to basic hygiene on the job. What started from her own lived experience on site has grown into a product and a platform that's changing the conversation around what inclusive work sites actually look like in practice. And she's doing all of it while still showing up on the tools every day. Jazz has been recognised for the impact of her work, receiving the 2025 NAWIC Crystal Vision Award, 2026 ABC Trailblazer Award, and a NAWIC Bright Ideas Grant to expand access to hygiene products for women in smaller and regional businesses. Her work is a reminder that leadership shows up in a lot of different ways on site, and sometimes it looks like building something that didn't exist before. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today, Jazz.
Thank you for having me.
So the first question I ask all our guests is, what does leadership mean to you?
See, I really struggle to answer this question whenever it gets asked, but I think leadership to me is someone that's willing to give you the time to learn and grow as a person. For me, I think being a leader, especially when I was a young apprentice, was something like I really lacked in leadership, having that leadership to follow. So I sort of just had to find my own path along the way in the industry. And so for me, I think a leader is someone that really wants to support you and be like the best version of themselves and make sure that you're going to be the best version of yourself.
I love that you call out that it's a hard question, because I think everyone, kind of is always on the back foot. But I remember going through the journey as well of being like, well, what is leadership? It's so hard to define. There's so many descriptions of it. And when I think of leadership now, I often go, well, when we think about leadership, we think about the things people do more so than who they are or what the title is. And so it never fails to surprise me how very quickly what does leadership mean to you is, well, this is what leaders do. And it just shows how much of leadership is an action, and it's all about how we show up and the actions we take. But for you, where did your journey begin in the context of leadership, whether that was in a formal leadership role or as a role model in the industry?
My initial leadership role would have probably started when I first started my apprenticeship. I was the first female in the business that I was working for and pretty much in the industry where I live. There wasn't very many that I didn't know of any other women when I first started. So I guess my role as a leader sort of started quite early because I was being that role model to other women coming into the industry. So I was quite lucky. I did manage to get through my whole apprenticeship. I ran into two females over 4 years. So I wasn't much of a leader over the 4 years, but I've obviously grown into that more leadership role over the last, well, since I qualified about 6 years ago. Yeah, I found my place.
I always reflect back to when I qualified and how much I struggled leading the next apprentice. And because no one really taught me how to teach, and all of a sudden I was still expected to do all these jobs in a certain time frame, but suddenly I was trying to coach the next first year. What was the biggest challenge you had in that transition, and what did you learn about how to show up as a leader for the next generation?
I got my first female apprentice when I was what was I? I was 2 years out of my time. So I managed to sort of learn what kind of leader I wanted to be and what kind of tradesman I wanted to be before I had to be a female tradesperson to another female. I think that was probably my biggest, like the positive part of me coming in. I actually got to take a bit of time to learn what kind of tradesperson I wanted to be before I had to pass that on to someone else. And so when I was 2 years out of my time, I got my first female apprentice and I was able to pass on everything that I knew, as well as what it's like to come into the industry as a female because it's not all sunshine and rainbows, as you know. So I was able to sort of guide her in the right direction and make sure she was responding to certain situations with an open mind, because some people can be quite demoralizing towards women in the industry. So I just made sure that I had her back and also that she knew she had that support.
It's really powerful how you've been able to be a role model and encourage someone so early in your career. Obviously, now the business you have with your business partner, the Go Company, exists because you found a gap on site that was beyond just how people speak to each other or what it is like being a woman amongst a majority male industry. What made you back yourself enough to actually do something about the challenges you found on site in terms of infrastructure?
Yeah, so it was actually within my business that we came up with the idea. I had another female apprentice come into our business, which I was very grateful of that. So that was about 3 years into being in the business I'm in, which is all on contracting. So we were working on site. She was 16, so she was quite young, didn't have her license, and was having to work with the other male employees on site. So I think for me, it was a massive eye opener when it happened multiple times where she'd get her period on site and she would have to ask one of the male tradesmen to leave site to take her home. And it became a bit of an issue within the business because we had tradesmen leaving site and apprentices leaving site, and it was costing the business money and it became this thing. So we actually had the conversation amongst, so it was myself, her as an apprentice, and then we had our other female apprentice and our admin, and we sort of discussed what can we do to support you, how can we ensure that you're not feeling like ignored on site, because we also wanted to feel supported being with the males as well. We don't want her to think that they're just like, oh, I've got to take her off site again, like here we go. We wanted it to be a positive sort of situation. So we said, right, well, let's create some little packs and we'll put them in all the vans. So no matter who you're with, you've got like this little pack within your vehicle that you're in. And then I reached out to another female electrician, which was Logan, my current business partner. And I said to her, like, is this a problem at the business you work at as well? And she said, yeah, it's really bad, because they had 5 female apprentices within their company and then her as a tradesperson. And so it was a really big issue. And we're like, oh, we can't be the only people here with this issue. So we sort of got banged our heads together. We'd only met once. And then I think we got chatting about it. And the second time we caught up, we ended up signing a business contract together and buying our first 1,000 packs.
That's amazing. Yeah, definitely just all in straight away. I love it. You find out, figure it out as you go. It is
Yeah.
a really interesting conversation that is pretty unique to the gendered roles of having more women in these environments where they haven't historically been. And it's interesting the dynamic as well for different trade contexts, because for me in a workshop as an apprentice, I was in the same place every day, or even when I was working FIFO, I was still in the same workshop, still had access to like my bag, my lockers. Whereas when I moved into being in a field service role, I no longer had that same access to equipment, but it was my van and I kind of was in control. So it was easy for me to prepare myself and not face any barriers. And that was, 6 or 7 years into my trade career. I'm curious to know, for my curiosity, but also for the fact that whether it's because of women and their differences or whether it is people having different needs for medical reasons, what is the conversation like when you're having this conversation with men who, if they have wives or partners or sisters, this isn't a new topic for them, but it's very new in the trade environment to be talking about these things. How do people typically react to this conversation and, I guess, embrace it?
It's pretty funny actually, because men take really well, and there's obviously the older generation who are a bit like, ill periods, ill women, what women. But we actually have really good conversations, and once they hear our story and they sort of get a bit of an understanding that we're not just like here to talk about periods, we're actually here to talk about the health issues that come with not having access to running water, or the simple things like being able to go to a toilet, like we dehydrate ourselves on site. And just there's lots of little conversations that I don't think they really think of. I think they just think periods, ill, move on. We're not hiring women. So it's actually been really, really positive with the conversations with men. It's actually the older women who have the biggest pushback. We've found, especially the wives of the building business owners, because obviously they just see money coming out of the account to go towards something that they might not necessarily realize that is important. And to them, it's a big hush hush thing. Like, we should be keeping it a secret. Like, don't tell the men, the women's secrets. It all needs to be quiet. So it's been a really 2 years talking about it. All the events we go to, it's always the men that are really on board with it, and then the women that are sort of hiding behind the shadows, and they're like, no, don't talk about that.
I think it makes a really strong case for what it means to create visibility, not just for diverse people in any workplace, but for the visibility of challenges we face and not needing to have that conversation in a negative perspective and instead going, hey, here's this challenge. And it's not just about helping women have access to toilets on site, but it's a productivity issue. It's a workplace health and safety issue, and we are bringing a solution to the table. And in terms of that in and of itself, that innovation and that pioneering of a new solution, when we have many challenges in our trade industries and none of them are solved quickly or overnight, is in itself a way that, I guess, not only are you a leader as a person, but you stepped into being a leader for the industry and in the work and the conversations you're bringing to the table. What has starting a business taught you about your own leadership?
Yeah, oh, that's so nice. Thank you. Oh, honestly, it's taught me so much about myself. One, I'm a very modest person, and I sometimes forget about what we're actually doing and how many lives it's changing. And some people will invite me to speak at certain events, and I'm like, oh no, there's got to be someone better out there that's more willing, or like more deserving of speaking at something like this. And then you sort of get thinking about what you've actually done, and you're like, oh my gosh, we have actually done some pretty cool things, and we've started some really great conversations. So, like, for me, I have just grown so much as a person in the last 2 years. One, I'm coming a lot more out of my shell, talking about the needs of women and men, especially, creating a lot more conversation within the industry between both genders, which has been a massive, massive thing and very necessary in construction and male dominated industries. So, to be able to step out of my comfort zone and start talking about things that are really important and that we might not necessarily talk about is just a massive step. And managing lots of people, like male business owners, we're trying to get them talking about things that they might not necessarily be comfortable talking about, but just allowing those conversations to be normalized. I think the fact that we're being able to do that has just made everyone grow as a person. And I think that to me is so important, is that we are changing as an industry, not just me as one individual leader. Like, I'm actually opening up, as well as Logan, opening up an industry-wide leadership opportunity, which is pretty great.
It's pretty impressive that just by being brave enough to go first, you're able to actually create empathy across people, even beyond your own network within a business. Now, you're still on the tools as tradies while you're running this business. How do you balance that from going from being on the tools in a roof out on site to, okay, I've actually got to go and I'm building something bigger than myself?
Yeah, we're definitely not balancing it, but we're very, very grateful. We've got so much support from our current bosses. My employer has gone above and beyond for me to support me in this journey. And I think for me, this is my way off the tools to eventually have a baby. So he sort of knew it was necessary to have something in place, but also it's benefiting his business because we're supporting women coming into the industry, and he gets a little bit of free advertising on the side because all the events we attend, we're usually in our work uniform anyway. But I think we're definitely not balancing it in a healthy way, but I think that's just what it's like to start a business. But we've got very supportive partners who allow us to do things morning and night and try not to create any drama. We do spend a lot of time outside of work hours working on the Go company and attending events, and yeah, definitely have fallen on to other people a lot to be able to get us here. So we're very grateful to have that support.
The impact of having a strong support network can never be understated, whether you're an apprentice on the tools trying to learn from people around you or launching a business. And I definitely know that I have said it on the podcast before and I will say it again. Sometimes it's just the right amount of crazy, but also, you know, the balance isn't always day to day. Sometimes it's like, okay, here's the season of I'm going to go full steam ahead and do my best to not burn out and crash, so that there's a season where it's like, okay, there is a little bit more balance and I can maybe prioritize myself a bit more. That's my going theory anyways. That's how I console myself. So
Yeah, and I think like entrepreneurial brains, they just work differently. Like there's some people that are made to just keep going full steam ahead, and there's just some people that aren't. And I think the people that are destined to be starting 5 businesses all at once.
yeah, let's not open that can of worms. What's the hard conversation you think the industry needs to start having to thinking about the future generation that we have coming into our workforce in the coming years?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think the hard conversation we really need to be having is to make sure we're like keeping accountable. So if there's something that's not right for us, we need to be making sure that we're either doing something about it or bringing it to attention to someone, because people aren't going to know unless we talk about it. And that's sort of how we went through our whole apprenticeships, plus a little bit extra, without having these hard conversations about not having access to toilets or not having access to sanitary bins or running water or any kind of sanitary item or just anything. That we went through. Well, I did 6, nearly 7 years of it, and that led to so many health issues for myself. So I wished I had have been that voice a little bit sooner to make sure that especially male business owners had have known at the time what I needed, because then I probably wouldn't be starting it later on in my life. But after all the health issues have arisen, I think as soon as something happens, just speak up about it, because I just think it's so important to be voicing opinions and things that are going on. And if your employer especially isn't willing to listen, well, that's probably another conversation you need to be having.
Really like the perspective you bring to that it's not just about the person who's receiving maybe uncomfortable information or receiving difficult feedback, to be able to give some space for themselves and the person to take that feedback on board, but we also have responsibility to actually create visibility of these challenges. And I was recently talking about it at an event, very similar thinking to yourself, because I was the same. I didn't say what my challenges were. I just kind of took them in my stride because I didn't know what the solution was. But if we're not talking about them, we can't find the solutions. And there are so many challenges that we all face as individuals, as teams, as businesses, but as an industry. And we all need to get better at just holding space for conversations that aren't comfortable and being okay with the fact that solutions might take some time. And I think it is interesting that for us, been at similar times in the industry, plus or minus a few years, that there is a similar experience, but it means now the apprentices that we have coming under us, we're able to help them speak up sooner. And over time, we're creating an industry that's going to have better conversations for better outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you obviously get the chance to see behind closed doors of a few more businesses than probably most other tradies. What's one practice that you see business owners or tradies doing that could make their sites more inclusive from what you're seeing that's working on site already?
I mean, I feel like I'm rambling on about toilets, but I definitely think setting up your sites at the beginning to make sure everything's going to run smoothly, because so Sparkies are usually the first one on site apart from the builder, but we come, we disconnect, we go back, we rough in, we come back at the end, we fit off. And I feel like there's always that weird period at the beginning where things are missed because the site's not set up yet. And so I think it's really hard, because when I come onto site as a female, I'm going to need the toilet, and usually it's the plumber at the same time on site, so we'll be disconnecting together, so there's no water, there's no toilet, there's no electricity to have lunch. But that's something I can work on. So there's a lot of little things that sort of get missed, and then the builders come on site, they put their toilet and they do everything else. So it's like, I think there just needs to be something a bit more organized in place. Maybe when they set up their site, they need to get there prior to the sub trades, have their toilet, have all the facilities in place to make sure that things just run a little bit smoother on site. Because one, you're saving us not drinking water and needing to leave site to use a toilet nearby, but also the efficiency of us being able to just get our job done is going to maximize, be at least 99%.
And that's universal for everyone. I definitely know I made bathroom breaks on the way to site because I'd never know if there would be toilet access or not.
Yeah.
And often that same challenge, if you're the first person on a site, you don't have access to that, it really changes how you plan your day and how much you can get done, because suddenly you're just making plans that no one else really sees or has visibility of, that reduces productivity for a business, not just us as individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, it's one of those things that we don't want to be charging you for our time to leave site. But at the end of the day, I've been doing it for 10 years now and I would never charge. And now I'm at a point where I'm like, I'm nearly 30 years old. I'm going to charge you my time to go to a toilet.
I love that. That's growth. The final question I ask everyone that comes on the podcast is, what advice would you give to other tradies about how they can practice everyday leadership wherever they're at in their trade journey?
I think something to get better at practicing, and something I probably need to work on as well, is just reminding yourself where you are and what you've done and where you're going. Something I really struggle with is looking at progress, and I'm always looking forward instead of reminding myself where I'm at present. I'm terrible at creating goals. I'm terrible at ticking off goals. I'm one of those people that just, I'm here for the ride, let's go. I've got so many things I want to do and I just need to get them done, instead of taking a step back and being like, oh my God, this is where I am. So I think something that people should really try hard to do is maintain goals for starters, but also just take a step back every now and then and just look at what you're doing or what you've done, and take a moment to really take that in, because one day you're just going to be 60 years old and your whole life's going to flash before your eyes and you won't realize like what you've done. And I think for me, when I was young, like 15 years old, I would drive in mum's car or like beside her, and I would see all the tradie vans and they'd be waving to each other. And I always said to my mum that that's going to be me one day. And I was actually just thinking last week, I was driving and I waved to someone. I seen one of our work vehicles. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm literally living my dream right now. Like, how crazy is that? And I've never once stopped to think I'm now one of those tradies that waves to my other workmates.
Oh, that's such a wholesome image. I really love the thoughtful perspective you've brought to this conversation, not just from leadership and being a role model, but about how we can open up some of these conversations to make our industry better and to help our teams and our teammates. So thank you for everything you've shared on the podcast, Jazz, and for the stories and the lessons and I guess some of the uncomfortable conversations that you also have in our industry every day.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another tradie sharing how they practice leadership in the trades. If you enjoyed this episode, tap like, subscribe to Tradies Who Lead, or follow us on socials for more stories from your favourite guests.